knowing your audience is vital. It's vital to know your audience, but also knowing a level of success and what you're delivering, for me. So as you say, if you're delivering a policy change and you're not a public speaker, but it goes with the territory, tough, because it goes with the territory. So learn and embrace it and understand, and also don't expect yourself to be the world's greatest orator on the first time you stand up in front of people. You're going to be nervous, embrace it, work on breathing, whether that's box breathing, whatever you do, but also have a level of appreciation and what is going to be success.
There are a few topics that come up quite often in coaching. One of those topics is communication, and in particular, presentations and public speaking. Now, whether it's standing up in front of a room full of peers, or whether you're speaking on an all-staff call or recording something, it's the kind of thing that can make people feel quite nervous, particularly if you're newly promoted and doing it for the first time, and maybe you've never had to do that kind of thing before. So whenever I'm thinking about presentations, it always takes me back to when I first started having to do presentations myself, and that was when I was in a training team over 20 years ago. Now, I was lucky enough that I was working with people who were really experienced and able to show me the ropes. And there was one guy in particular called Ian, and I learned a lot from watching him command the room. Now, since then, he's built an incredible career that's all about mastering the art of communication and high-stakes presentations. Some of you will know him. He's an award-winning broadcaster and a sports journalist, perhaps most famously as a football commentator for BBC Radio Leicester, where he's called over 600 live games, including Leicester City's historic Premier League Championship win. Now, if that's not high-pressure public speaking, I don't know what is. Beyond the commentary box, he's a top-class public speaker and event host, moderating QAs and hosting award ceremonies for corporates and charities. If that's not enough, he faced the intense pressure of the boardroom as a contestant on The Apprentice. So he is someone who truly understands what it takes to command a room, use your voice, and deliver with presence and engaging delivery. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for taking up your time this evening to come on the podcast. It's great to see you again, Ian, and thank you for being a guest on Level Up.
Pleasure, mate. It's good to see you. Always good to see you, bud.
So the reason I've invited you on today is that over the last few years, I've been doing more coaching than I ever have before, spending more time with coaching clients. And I've started to notice that there's a few things that come up quite often, more often than not. And one of those things that tends to come up with almost all leaders, particularly newly promoted leaders, is around communication, and a very specific kind of communication. We're talking about public speaking, presentations, whether it's their first time standing up in a room full of other leaders, or whether it's an all-staff call, they've got a given presentation. It's the kind of thing that people get really nervous about. Now, I know this has been your bread and butter for a very long time, but just for anyone who doesn't know you, do you want to say a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into some advice?
Of course. I appreciate you asking me to join you, by the way. My name is Ian Stringer. I am a football commentator by trade. I have been commentating for 21 years on live football. So I'll be in the stadia, whether it's Los Angeles or Leyton Orient. I have been there and I will be there, and I have to perform, communicate and inform, educate, entertain an audience, and the audience can range from thousands to millions. Done about 1,000 live commentary games on different platforms. That can be radio, TV, online. And I'm also, and have been for again about 20 years, similar job, requires similar skills, an event host. So I will host events, whether they be black tie events, charity events, award events, community events. It can be an outdoor sport event for 15,000 people. It can be an indoor, intimate team building event for 20 people. I like to refer to myself affectionately as a gob on a stick.
Well, I've seen you in action. Recently, it's been clips, but back in the day, in the flesh, when we were in the training room together 20 plus years ago, you never looked nervous. You don't look nervous now, and you didn't look nervous then. What is that? Is it just like breathing for you, or actually is this the duck paddling under the water? How does it actually feel when you're going into those environments?
Do you know, Lee, that's a great question, and it's a great question because people don't particularly like the answer. And the answer is, I've never been nervous in doing what I do. I remember the first time I picked up a commentary mic, I went to my first game in 2004. You and I were working together. And I went to a game of football to do reports, Wycombe Wanderers against Cambridge United. And I expected to be nervous all week. And there's a lot of technicals that go on. And again, this chat with you is going to be interesting because a lot of the things that were instilled in you and I as much younger men, those fundamentals have helped me and still help me in my job now. So I actually still have a list of broadcast rules. And the first rule has a swear word in it, but essentially it's don't mess it up. And I remember a leader that you and I worked under for a long, long time, Richard Brooks Harley, would always say to us before we went in, don't mess it up.
And I just didn't get flip chart.
Honestly, don't walk in front of a projector. I still can't walk in front of a projector. It does my head in. If I see somebody walk in front of a projector, cringe, no, wait. Anyway, I picked up a mic that day and I wasn't nervous. I was watching the game of football. I was calling it. I kept the reports tight. I made sure my voice was clear. I made sure there was clarity in what I was saying, not how I was saying it. And since then, I've never been nervous. I'll pick up a microphone and there's 15,000 people and I'm not nervous. I'm calling the FA Cup final and I'm not nervous. So it just kind of comes naturally to me, I think.
Well, that's a great asset to have if you can go in and not feel those nerves, but perhaps not nerves, then let's talk about pressure. Because, I mean, there's got to be a lot of pressure. If you're calling a final, that's a different kettle of fish. So let's talk about pressure. How do you handle those higher stakes situations?
I remember my commentary coach, football commentary coach, yes, we have one, gave me some advice before the FA Cup final. I called him. He said, make yourself a little sign, get a piece of paper, rip it in half, fold it over like it's a name setting at a wedding. And just write yourself one message, one clear message that you, in clarity now, could look at in chaos tomorrow, and it would help with your clarity. It would help clear the fog. So I simply wrote on this piece of paper, you're a football commentator, call it as you see it. And for me, stripping everything back from a pressurized situation and dealing with the fundamentals of just do your job. What's your job? Your job is to inform and entertain an audience. Do your job. You're a commentator, call it as you see it. Forget that you're 6-year-old's at home wearing his little Leicester City shirt and he's desperate for the team to win and he's got his little fox. Forget that your dad's 6,000 miles away and he brought you up as a Leicester fan and you're actually commentating on that team, that your 90-year-old nan is desperate with the rest of the city to see Leicester City eventually, at the fourth time of asking, lift the FA Cup. Forget that. Forget it, because it's you and you are not important. Put your audience front and centre and that will help.
That clarity is really key. One of the things that I always try to advise, very similar to that, is remember, what's the point? You're standing up in front of a room of people, or you're going on that all-staff call, or you're giving a speech, whatever it might be. What are you actually trying to achieve? Usually there's a message. Either it's a call to action, you need people to do something, or if it's a training event, you need people to understand something, you're trying to impart some knowledge. If you can focus on that, actually, then you stop worrying about, is my hair quite right? Am I standing in the right place? And, you know, we laugh about don't kick the flip chart and don't walk in front of the projector. But I think early on, you need to let that melt away into the background. And you just need to think, what am I actually trying to achieve here? Okay, today I want these 50 people to understand this new policy, for example. That's what I need to do. And everything needs to be focused around that. And knowing your audience, you've alluded to that as well, and the situation, you calling a football match versus that hosting a charity gig, very different environment. So that must require a really different mindset going into those different situations.
Yeah, but it's knowing the audience, isn't it? So it's knowing before you go in who the audience are for the charity you're representing. Yeah, I mean, I'm employed, that's my job, it pays for the house. But you've got to know your audience. And my commentary coach always tells me, Rob Nothman's his name, commentator himself and very, very good interviewer and producer. The one thing he'll always say when he gives feedback on commentary is he puts a huge asterisk and he'll say, you know your audience, I don't. If you're in local radio, which I was for a long time, I'm now on national radio and international TV. You know your audience, I don't. So I might say something that actually your audience like or get, or it's a constant. Knowing your audience is vital. It's vital to know your audience, but also knowing a level of success and what you're delivering, for me. So as you say, if you're delivering a policy change and you're not a public speaker, but it goes with the territory, tough, because it goes with the territory. So learn and embrace it and understand, and also don't expect yourself to be the world's greatest orator on the first time you stand up in front of people. You're going to be nervous, embrace it, work on breathing, whether that's box breathing, whatever you do, but also have a level of appreciation and what is going to be success. You're not going to be a 10 out of 10. One of my favorite tricks for young apprentices as commentators is we'll get off the air, pack up all the kit, walk away, and we'll be walking away, and they'll be excited, and I'll just look at them and go, 7 out of 10. You'll do a lot of 7 out of 10s. A 7 out of 10 is okay, because you can't make radio that's a 10. But honestly, for me, I want to do a good job. I'm an international broadcaster. I do a good job, but I think context for me is really, really important, because it's very good grounding. It helps you understand that it's okay. You're talking into a microphone, you're typing an email, you're having a negotiation with somebody, you're trying to sell something. They're just transferable skills, and don't expect to be an expert at them. It's not pressure. It's not pressure. That's maybe why I've never had nerves.
Yeah, you got to keep perspective. And 7 out of 10, that's if you can get that as an average, let alone get any better, then that's fantastic. I'm not preaching to broadcasters and presenters here. I'm talking about people who need a good, solid set of leadership skills, and some are going to be better than others at some things. If you can hit a 7 out of 10 on a regular basis at general communication presentation, I think you did a pretty good job.
I agree. I do think that we are sadly lacking in 2025 with good communicators, and I think that having really good conversations about this is a good thing, and having difficult conversations, having conversations that might not be much fun, talking about stuff that might be a challenge. Okay, how do we do that? Can we do that? How can I do that? How can I assist? How can I support? I think a lot of it is the art of listening, which I think is an art form. I really do. But also communication is something you learn over the years, I think. And you can only learn best from failing. But in order to fail, you've got to try.
Where would you start, though, with someone who's new, maybe someone who's coming in, newly promoted, and they are going to have to start doing this kind of thing? What sort of 101 basic advice just to maybe get them? Don't even think about 7 out of 10. Let's just talk about 2 out of 10 to break that initial nerve.
The first thing I would do I would try and get a degree of success. So first and foremost, I'd like you to understand that. But before we do start looking at how we can improve whatever skills you've got, I would really like to know what success looks like for you. So you've got a presentation tomorrow that we're going to work on. We're going to go through. The presentation's on Tuesday, but I want you to tell me about Wednesday. So I'm on this call with you on Wednesday. We're looking back on Tuesday. What is success for you? So what we're going to do, we're going to come up with A, B, and C. So A is the ultimate. It's called brilliantly. Tell me about brilliantly. Okay, brilliantly is I'm engaged with the audience. I can see eyes. I get reactions. I'm getting audio and visual cues. And people are applauding because they think the policy that I'm introducing is great. Okay, what's B? B is every now and then people might be looking at the phones because they're bored, but on the whole, they're okay. C is I walk off stage and I'm not booed. Okay, cool. Let's work on A, B, and C. If it's a B minus on Wednesday, you okay with that? On my first go, would I take a B minus? Probably. Okay, that's good. So I would start with trying to create a level of expectancy versus skill set. And then I'd work on the skill set, Lee, is what I'd do. Okay, so you don't particularly know how to engage with an audience. Show me the example of how to engage with an audience. Show me an example of somebody that does it well. I can give you some tips. You want some of my best tips, some of my top 5 tips? I can give you those, no problem. You need to practice them over the years. And when your head's going crazy on stage, you might forget them. But here's one to remember. When you think you're losing them to a C and they're all bored of you and they're all looking at their phones, try this one. When you're talking, pause. and you watch everybody look at you. You watch everybody go, power of a pause. There you go. There is a 101 presentation tip for you. That would be a word of advice. Mainly practice. It's boring, but practice. Practice the art of delivery. Practice pitch, practice tone, practice volume, and practice your power sphere, which is from your eyes to your hips, using your hands, making sure that they're open, making sure that you're presented in the way possible. Try and own the stage as best you can, but mainly have a level of expectation that you are not going to be the next best, great presenter on the stage. You're going to require practice. It's going to require small steps.
That's really interesting, because you've given some technical tips there, but what you really leaned into quite heavily was more along the headspace and that visualization as well, almost like NLP kind of visualization of how's it going to go, getting yourself in the right mental state, and then some technical tips along the way, but much more about how you're feeling about it, and then practice. Am I getting that right as to what you think is the main ingredients here?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really important for me, because if you're presenting something and you've not got a level of appreciation as to what you define success to be, then how can you reflect fairly on you? Would you do it to somebody else? Would you give somebody else feedback on something without already speaking to them about the measurables? You wouldn't not give somebody a sales target and then measure them, because you need to give them a level of expectation. Do that to yourself. You can quantify it. You can quantify football commentary. How many times we say the score, how many times we say where the ball is, how many times we say the time. You can quantify a delivery of a speech.
It's one of those things, isn't it? When you do it all the time, or you've done it so before, you can kind of forget that actually this person who's not done it before doesn't actually quite know what good looks like or what the rules of engagement are. So
get it in your own head. So get it in your own head Monday. What is good for me? I'm not a presenter. So I'm going to look back. You are going to look at yourself and you're going to feel awkward. You are going to listen back to yourself. You are going to feel awkward. You don't ask your spouse or your family to review it. Preferably ask somebody that has no emotional contact with you and go, can you just give me a bit of feedback on this? I'll watch this. And I'd like the feedback delivered in this manner, if that's okay. So again, define boundaries. But you've got to be kind to yourself because of your skill level. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Be kind to yourself. So on Monday, I'd really like, on Wednesday to come off stage and I delivered the message. There was clarity. That'll do. Was I wearing the best suit? Maybe not. Did I look okay? Maybe not. Did I sound really monotone? I might have done. But it's a journey, right? You've got to understand you're not going to be brilliant. Take one.
Yeah, great advice. 2 out of 10 today is fine. 4 out of 10 next time. Keep going. Small steps. Yeah.
Correct. But want to learn. Always expand your learning if that's what you want to in terms of delivery.
And I like the advice you gave around that. Get an opinion and some feedback from someone, but not someone who's going to be too close. And they're going to feel like they're being kind by giving you what you want to hear when actually you need to hear the reality. So yeah, get some objective advice and watch yourself back. I think you said that as well. Watch yourself back, listen to yourself back. Absolute solid gold. What about in terms of preparation? I was quite keen to talk to you about the difference between prepared moments, so whether that be the training room pre-prepared speech scenario versus absolute on the fly, whether that be commentating on a game, you don't know which way it's going to go, or if it's just getting caught in a situation where you weren't expecting to have to speak, but suddenly you're in the spotlight. How do you prepare for those different kinds of scenarios?
The difference between a prepared piece of delivery, I guess in my industry, it would be a script as an event host or a sport bulletin on the radio, I guess, versus, like you say, football commentary is 95 minutes of there is no script, which is, I guess, why management don't particularly like it, because they've got no control. Anything could come out of your mouth. The defamation lawyers are on hand ready just in case, because we're unscripted. We are. You talk to other broadcasters about commentary and they'll often say, how do you do it? You got no script. Well, we work best with no script because we know our subject. Knowing your subject is the key. to go to your question, Lee, would say the difference is very much an emotional strength on the subject matter that you're talking to. So if it's prepared, if it's a PowerPoint presentation and it's got to be verbatim, I ain't great. I'm not up to practice, get it in there and deliver.
I'll tell you what, I mean, everyone is different, but what I have noticed is that a lot of times when I'm coaching people, the thing they fear the most is live, unprepared speaking. But actually, when I have the opportunity to observe them, which quite often we do now because everything's recorded on Teams and things like that, they do far better than they think they're going to do. The thing that they're less nervous about is the scripted moments. But actually, when we look back, they're the ones where they tend to stumble. And I think it's because when you've got a script, sometimes in your mind, you get a false sense of security, or you think maybe perfection is achievable, so you want to get it word perfect, and you just stumble. Whereas when you're caught on the moment and you get asked a question, as long as you know the subject, people just rock and roll and they deliver.
As long as you know the subject. So if you're managing the audience, you're managing yourself, you're managing the subject, and you've got all of those things covered, you're okay. You're okay. And you're absolutely right, in my view, in that you've got an ability to cope with, have more faith in your ability to cope with the unexpected. And also, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Do you know, Lee, I'll level with you. I've no idea, but I'm going to give you a promise that I'm going to go find an answer and I will bring that answer to you and make sure that I pick it up direct. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Great. Don't lie. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. If you do know the answer, then freestyle it. You know your subject, but you're right. When people read a script, they think, if I read those words in order, I'm going to be okay. But if you read those words in order and it's very monotone and you don't move your body and you have no emotion in them at all, then how do you think the audience take that message in? You've read it, fine. Boring.
Hello, I have an update from Level Up. www.levelupleadership.uk is now the main hub for Level Up. You can still follow the podcast wherever you usually listen, and you can still connect and engage on LinkedIn. But Level Up Leadership, that's all one word, levelupleadership.uk will now be our central hub for all of our content. Head over there now and don't forget to follow so you never miss an article. Thanks. Now back to the episode.
If it's audio only, I love that. I love just audio. If it's an audio voice call or if it's audio commentary, radio commentary is just romantic. It's beautiful. There's a romance in having to describe what you can see, having to describe your subject matter using just one medium, which is audio. So you can't see me trying to tell you about this new policy, Lee. But what I am going to tell you is that the policy is going to be a challenge initially. This is why we're doing it. But I think, and I hope I've got your backing with it as well with your team, that actually in 6 months, what it's going to do is it's going to give us an ability as a staff and as a business to be able to achieve this. I'm excited about it, and I hope you can come with me on that journey. And how you deliver that audio is really important because, again, your language is key as well as your tonality that you use within there. So don't underestimate the power of words. It's the yes and theory, isn't it? It's the yes and. It's you're faced with negativity, you're faced with a difficult thing. It's how you reply. It's your language and how you deliver that audio, if it is audio, that can help. I don't really want to do this. Yes, and I get that. I understand that. What I'd like us to focus on is this, rather than a yes, but. Yeah, but we can do this. If you say but, then that audibly, that just makes people's backs just go up. So
yeah, that's all they've got. They can't see your expression and your empathy. All they've got is the but. So yeah.
Correct. And that's why I think language, I'm sounding like a granddad, but I think we're losing the ability to communicate in our native tongue. I don't think social media is particularly helping that. I think I'm going to blame our friends over the pond a little bit as well for every other word being like, if you're under the age of 18. And I just would, don't underestimate the power of using this wonderful language that is our native tongue. You don't have to be a wordsmith to do it, but use what you can, do what you can. It's a wonderful language, and don't try not to try and use language. If it's audio, try and use language that comes across effectively. Don't waste words. Again, football commentary is really interesting with this in mind, Lee, actually, if I can touch on this briefly. So word economy is really important in football in the final third. So when a team's in the final third of the pitch, that's the business area. That's when in the next second someone could score. There's a saying in football, it takes a second to score. Someone could whip one in, bang, goal. So word economy in that third is really important. So you'll drop a first name of a player. So you won't say Jamie Vardy, and you'll bring all your words in. Vardy cross, header, goal. 4 words. Now, if it's in the middle of the pitch, Vardy's got the ball, he plays it square, whoever. Gascoigne picks it up, Gascoigne looks up, ruffles his hair, moves it out to the left wing. That's great. Your word economy there's do what you want. You ain't gonna score there. But in the important bits, when you really want a message listened to, bring your word economy in. Don't use too many words. Bring your word economy in to deliver the message you need. It's different. It's radio, bang, goal. Because in radio, you've got to beat the crowd. Because if the crowd tell the listener that there's a goal before the commentator does, what are you there for?
That's gold advice. I mean, yeah, when someone's in the box, that's not the time to start talking about the side story and the background. Focus on the action. Yeah.
Nope.
Well, I'm going to do a bit of a recap on some of the points that I think I really want to emphasize. So we've talked a lot about knowing your audience and knowing the situation and adapting, also taking perspective. The speech you're giving probably isn't the most important thing that's going to be ever in your life or even for your audience that day. So just take a breath. It's going to be fine, even if it doesn't go well. Knowing your subject is more important than preparing your script. I think if you know what you're talking about, you don't need to have a word perfect script. And I think the headspace and visualizing how it's going to go, more important than technical aspects. Not that technical aspects aren't important, but get your mind right first. I think that's my takeaways from this conversation. Have I missed anything, or is there anything that you'd want us to just throw in and add as any advice before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. I think not having the reliance on the script as being your crutch is really importantly, actually, because if the script falls over, technology can fall over, by the way. You're really reliant on a laptop giving you the speech and you've not got it printed out, just in case, and the battery dies, you are finished. So prepare for the unexpected, technically. Get your technicals right. Again, another Richard Brooks Harleyism. And it's true. And just know your subject, that you could dig yourself out of a hole and back yourself. You know the subject. Try delivering it without the speech. We get taught that when we're bulletin reading. So before you're doing a sport bulletin, when you get coaching, you'll be given the script and you'll be asked to read it. And then your coach will say, right, throw the script away and say, last night's Wimbledon final, tell me about it. Oh, Federer was outstanding. It was another Djokovic Federer, will he, won't it? And it's gone down to a tiebreaker. Federer's just pulled this drop shot out of nowhere. It was incredible. And then your coach will say, what's wrong with delivering that to your audience rather than the script you just read? So the short version of this story is, kids, know your content such that you're okay. You're really comfortable in your skin with your content. And don't have an over-reliance on the script. Maybe practice without it. You never know, it might be a little bit better. I guess that would be the only thing I would say, is that maybe fear the over-reliance on the script. Try without it. It might be better.
I'm stealing that idea. I'm going to be getting people to write scripts and throw them in the bin and then tell me what their content is. That's a great piece of advice. Yeah, definitely. Before I bring this to a close, Ian, what are you up to? How can people find out more about your work and can they connect with you?
Of course, yeah. What am I up to? I am event hosting loads. So I'm event hosting, corporate team building. So if you've got a business that really needs some team building, I'm working with a company called Go-To Events at the minute. They're the UK's biggest corporate team building event company. I'm working for them loads. I'm freelance, I'm self-employed. Gob on a Stick for hire, but I'm doing loads of stuff for them. And it's really popular at the minute that we go in and do 3 hours of team building, corporate team building, but not the boring corporate team building stuff that you might expect. These are really good interactive ways of doing it. And it can be a play on like a TV show, or it can be very CSR driven. So we do one called Sleep Pod, where the group will build a sleep pod for people who sleep in rough, or bike build, where you'll build a bike and a family who desperately need it will get it. I'm doing loads of hosting with that in mind. And I work for the likes of Talk Sport. I work for Sky Sports. I work for ITV from time to time as a football commentator. So you can find me on Twitter, X, whichever is I think Elon Musk would probably prefer that we call it X, wouldn't he? And I am at Stringer Sport on there, or again on Instagram. You can find me on there. That's a bit more private. If you want to see pictures of my kids playing football or whatever, you can find me there at Stringer Sport on Instagram. And of course on LinkedIn, everyone's favorite LinkedIn. You'll find me, just type in my name, Ian Stringer, and you'll find me. But I'm event hosting and love it. And yeah, that's what I'm doing, mate. They pay me to watch football. What a lucky boy.
Lucky man. All right, we'll make sure we drop a few links into the notes so people can find you if they want to. My final question, I always ask everyone the same question because this is, after all, a leadership podcast. So, Ian, who is a leader that you admire and why?
A leader that I admire. I really admire considered leadership. So I'm looking at one, the other side of this camera. It's not very helpful. And it's Claudio Ranieri. So they're probably going to be football related. Leicester City manager in 2016. Now, he achieved the unachievable, so it's understandable, but he was really considered as a leader. I guess probably the most famous one I could cite would be Gareth Southgate. I think Sir Gareth Southgate, to you and I know. Gareth Southgate was the England manager for a long time, and whilst he didn't win England a trophy, I admired and admire his leadership for this reason. He's considered. A lot of people think it's 2025, so you've got to be polar opinion. It's going to be the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. It's not. By the way, it's not. You could be here. And I know that's not great for TikTok. And I know it's not great for Instagram Reels, but that's just a fantastical thing that happens on a 6-inch screen in front of you, that the world exists around you. And that level of considered leadership, I really admire. I admire somebody that isn't hot-headed and goes, bang! No, it doesn't fit with my personality. You may not be surprised to hear. And I prefer a leader to be calm, measured, fair, but a good listener. If you want to disagree with me, I'm cool with that. But at least listen to me. Listen to me and say, Ian, I've heard what you said. And I get it. I understand. I know you might not like it. I can understand the elements of why you don't like it. And I understand why you want to do things differently. I get it. I've listened and I hear you. We are going to move in this direction. But I want you to know that I'm here and we're going to check in every 2 weeks just so I can go, what do you reckon? And we can have a chat about it. We'll have a coffee. What do you reckon? Now, it's empowering me a bit. It's telling me you're going to get on with it. But that won't get the best out of me. So, and that was Gareth, by all accounts. So I admire that measured delivery of somebody like Gareth Southgate and his ability to create a team, because that's what he did. He created a team, not on the pitch, but off the pitch. He created a culture, a really positive culture. Come with me. It's an arm round the shoulder. Come with me. I'm not going to shout at you and tell you to do it. You could try. You're probably not going to get the best out of you people, I think. But come with me. Fancy doing this? Yeah, I do. I tell you what, so do I. So we'll both do it together, me and you. I'll lead you, but follow me and we'll have a good old go. How about that? And all the rest of the lads around you in this team, they want the same. And we're going to be a good group of lads. How about that? And again, forgive me, it's a male football environment. I'm not closing myself to one gender, but you asked about leader. He's the men's football manager for England, was for a long, long time. So it's that kind of leadership that I admire, and he would be a great leader. Good leaders listen, and I appreciate the art of listening and the power of being a good listener.
I think a football leader is the answer I was expecting, but a great answer. Of course, it was only ever going to be a football leadership example, but what a great example. Not hot-headed, considered, empathetic leadership, I think I got from that as well, understanding your team and carrying them with you rather than directing you. That doesn't just relate to football. That translates across all types of leadership and all industries. So I think that's a great example. So thank you for that. Well, Ian, thank you again for coming on the podcast. You've given us some great advice, so I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
No, pleasure, mate, and I appreciate the invite. And also, anybody that's willing to learn, I've got a lot of time for. So I wish everybody the very best of luck. And remember, the first time you do public speaking, you're not going to be brilliant at it. But the first time you did whatever you're an expert in now, you probably weren't great at it. When Lee and I first delivered our training sessions, we weren't brilliant, but we got a bit better.
And we learned not to kick the flip chart.
Don't click the flip chart. Don't walk in front of the projector. Oh, it still does my crust in, honestly.
So that was Ian Stringer. It's great to have Ian with his 20 plus years of presentation and public speaking experience to come and give us some advice. And for me, it was nice to catch up with an old buddy as well. But there were two bits of advice in particular that I wanted to focus in on. Firstly, Ian's advice around scripts, and how it's great to have a script, but maybe you should put it to one side and practice without it, because it's more important to know your subject matter than it is to try and be word perfect when reading a presentation. And the other piece of advice was that it's probably more important to think about your headspace and your mindset than it is to worry too much about technical skills, particularly early on. You need to take a breath and give yourself a break, and realise that even if the presentation doesn't go absolutely perfectly, as long as you get your message across, that's the main thing. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, I'm sure your network will too, so please share it widely. And until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep levelling up.